What if I told you that one afternoon of digging a hole in your backyard could feed your family for the next 200 years? Not your family right now, your family, your children's family, and maybe even the one after that. Annual vegetables are honest work. You dig, you sow, you water, you harvest, and then you start again from zero in the spring. I'm not against that, but there's a different category of food production that operates on a completely different timeline, one that rewards patience with abundance that compounds decade after decade. We're talking about trees. Not ornamental ones, not shade trees, food-bearing trees with production records that will make your jaw drop. One species drops up to 1,000 pounds of edible food every single year and can do that for 300 years straight. Another delivers chocolate-flavored pods in conditions that wipe out every other crop around it. And one more can sustain an entire family of 4 from a single trunk. In the next 13 minutes, I'm going to walk you through 8 of the most powerful, long-lived food-producing trees on the planet, ranked by their survival value. Some will feed you in 3 years, others will feed your grandchildren. All of them reward the person who plants them today, because every year you wait is a year of production you will never get back. Let's go. Welcome. If you're new here, this channel is about real, practical food independence. Hit subscribe and the notification bell so you catch every video. Now, let's get into these trees.
Tree number 8, mulberry, the invisible superfood hiding in plain sight. There's a reason you've never seen mulberries in a grocery store. It's not because they're rare, it's because they're too fragile to survive commercial shipping. They bruise the moment they're picked and begin fermenting within hours. Grocers don't want them, but you absolutely should. A thriving mulberry tree can deliver 50 to 80 pounds of fruit across several weeks each summer, not all at once, which is actually ideal. The staggered ripening means you can eat fresh, dry batches for storage, and still have plenty left to ferment into wine or freeze for later, all without feeling overwhelmed. What makes mulberries remarkable from a food security standpoint is their near total self-sufficiency. After the first year, you essentially stop caring for them. No spraying, no pruning schedule, no fertilizer program. They tolerate thin soil, sustained drought, and outright neglect. Growth is fast. Expect your first harvest in 3 to 5 years, which beats most fruit trees significantly. Across Central Asia, particularly in Afghanistan and Pakistan, dried mulberries have been a winter diet staple for centuries. They're one of the few fruits that reach 10% protein content when dried, an extraordinary nutritional profile for something that grows on an untended tree. Fresh, dried, fermented, frozen, mulberries adapt to whatever preservation method you have available. Even the leaves have value. They're the exclusive food source for silkworms, making the tree historically significant beyond just its fruit. Plant one where falling fruit won't stain a patio or path. Give it consistent water for the first season to establish roots, then step back and collect food every summer for the next 50+ years. Tree number 7, hazelnut. Dense calories you can actually store. Here's a nutritional reality most people overlook when thinking about food security. Sugar is enjoyable, but calories and fat keep you functional. When resources become scarce, fat is the hardest macronutrient to source. Hazelnut trees directly solve that problem. At 2,800 calories per pound, hazelnuts sit in a category almost no other tree crop can reach. A single mature tree produces 20 to 30 pounds of nuts annually. That's somewhere between 56,000 and 84,000 calories from one trunk. Combined with high healthy fat content and meaningful protein, hazelnuts are a caloric foundation, not just a snack.
And they store. In the shell, without refrigeration, hazelnuts remain viable for over a year. When grain harvests failed across northern Europe during historical famines, hazelnut stands were frequently the backup that kept communities from starvation. That's not folklore, it's documented agricultural history. They begin producing in 3 to 4 years and remain reliably productive for 40 to 50 years in temperate climates. The one requirement? Cross-pollination. Plant at least 2 different varieties close enough to exchange pollen, and you'll get consistent nut production year after year. Raw, Roasted, pressed into oil, or ground into flour or nut butter, hazelnuts convert into every format a serious food pantry would want. Establish 2 varieties, water them through their first season, harvest in fall when the nuts drop, and you've created a calorie-generating system that will outlast you. Tree number 6, fig. Ancient food security, still earning its reputation. The fig tree appears more times in ancient religious and historical texts than almost any other plant. That's not coincidence. It reflects thousands of years of human experience with a tree that reliably produces food when everything else fails. A well-established fig tree delivers 100 to 200 plus pounds of fruit annually. Fresh figs are delicious but won't last long. The real power of the fig lies in what happens after you dry them. Dried figs store for over a year, pack in at 1,200 calories per pound, and provide meaningful fiber, potassium, and calcium. For centuries across the Mediterranean and Middle East, dried figs were how people survived winters, sieges, and crop failures. The fig's threat tolerance is genuinely impressive. Intense heat? Fine. Minimal water? It adapts. Rocky, shallow, nutrient-poor soil? Still produces. And it does all of this while requiring almost no intervention once established. Production can begin in as little as 3 to 2 years from planting, among the fastest timelines on this list. Figs also propagate easily from cuttings, meaning one tree can become many within a few seasons. In warm climates, nearly any variety works. In colder regions, select cold-hardy cultivars specifically bred for your zone. Plant in a sunny spot with decent drainage, support it through establishment, and then watch it generate hundreds of pounds of storable, calorie-dense food annually for 50 to 100 years. Tree number 5, Carob, the drought-proof food factory. If you're trying to build a food system that holds up under genuine climate stress, extended droughts, degraded soil, punishing heat, carob belongs near the top of your planning list. Carob is native to the Mediterranean basin, where it has been actively cultivated for over 4,000 years. The reason? It produces substantial food in precisely the conditions that kill everything else. Extreme drought, rocky mineral-poor soil, unrelenting heat. Carob doesn't just tolerate these conditions, it thrives in them. The pods have a naturally sweet chocolate-adjacent flavor. A mature tree yields 200 to 400 pounds of pods per year, and once harvested and dried, those pods store for 2 to 3 years without any special processing. At roughly 50% sugar by weight, plus meaningful fiber and mineral content, carob pods were emergency food during Mediterranean famines and military sieges throughout history. A linguistic footnote that reveals just how widespread and trusted carob was: the word carat, used to measure gemstone weight, derives from the carob seed. The seeds are so remarkably uniform in weight, the jewelers used them as counterweights for centuries. A food so reliable it became a unit of measurement. The limitation is climate. Carob is not cold-hardy below about 20 degrees F, so it's suited to Mediterranean, subtropical, and warm temperate zones. But if your region fits that profile, or if you're thinking about where food production is headed as climates shift, carob is one of the highest-value long-term investments available. It takes 6 to 8 years to begin producing, but then runs for 80 to 100 years with essentially zero maintenance. Tree number 4, chestnut, the tree that kept mountain civilizations alive. Chestnuts occupy a unique nutritional position in the tree crop world. They function more like a grain than a nut. Low in fat, high in complex carbohydrates, with roughly 200 calories per 100 grams. They're more comparable to a potato than a walnut, nutritionally speaking. For mountain communities across Italy, France, and large portions of Asia, chestnut trees weren't supplementary food. They were the primary caloric base for entire populations. Chestnut flour became so central to regional diets that it shaped entire culinary traditions still celebrated today. When lowland grain harvests failed, communities higher in the hills survived on chestnut forests their grandparents had planted. A single mature chestnut tree can yield 200 to 400 pounds of nuts per year. You can roast them, boil them, dry them for long-term storage, or mill them into flour. The trees themselves are massive, incredibly long-lived, and capable of surviving for 300 plus years, meaning what you plant today may still be producing food in the 24th century. The honest trade-off is time. Chestnut trees need 5 to 7 years before initial production and 20 to 30 years to reach their full potential output. This is explicitly a multi-generational investment. You're not planting for yourself alone, you're building food infrastructure for the people who come after you. Blight-resistant varieties are now widely available, addressing the devastation that eliminated American chestnuts in the early 20th century. Plant in well-draining soil, protect young trees from deer browse, and give them the decades they need to mature. What they return is a food system with a multi-century production horizon. Tree number 3, walnut, a living endowment of fat, protein, and timber. If fat is the hardest resource to secure during periods of scarcity, the walnut tree is one of the most direct solutions available in temperate climates. A mature tree drops 50 to 80 pounds of nuts every fall. At the caloric density walnuts carry, that's 150,000 to 240,000 calories from a single tree each year, with exceptional concentrations of omega-3 fatty acids, plant-based protein, and micronutrients. In-shell walnuts store for over a year without refrigeration, making them one of the few high-fat, high-calorie crops that can be held through a full winter and into the following year. During World War II, walnut groves provided critical fat intake for communities where meat and butter had been rationed or eliminated. During the Great Depression, families with mature walnut trees had both a food source and a tradable commodity. Black walnuts, native across North America, are extraordinarily hardy. They handle cold winters, drought periods, and thin soils without complaint. English walnuts produce larger, easier-to-crack nuts and are the dominant commercial variety. Both are legitimate choices depending on your climate and priorities. Walnuts take 6 to 10 years to begin producing and 20 to 30 years to reach maximum output. The trees live 150 to 200 years and grow to impressive sizes. Mature specimens are worth thousands of dollars for their timber value alone, meaning the tree functions simultaneously as a food source and a financial asset. One practical note: walnut roots release a compound called juglone that inhibits certain nearby plants. Plant away from vegetable gardens and sensitive shrubs. Give them space, water through establishment, protect from deer in early years, and within a decade, you'll be harvesting serious quantities of one of the most nutritionally complete foods a tree can produce. Tree number 2, apple. Underestimated, versatile, and built for cold climates. People take apple trees for granted. That's a mistake. No other temperate fruit tree delivers the same combination of high yield, cold tolerance, storage longevity, and processing versatility. And for anyone living in a northern climate, apples represent one of the few realistic options for year-round food security through tree crops alone. A productive, mature apple tree brings in 200 to 400 pounds of fruit annually. But the real value isn't in eating fresh apples off the tree, it's in what you can do with that volume afterward. Stored properly, in cool, dark conditions, fresh apples last 3 to 6 months. Dried apple rings store well over a year. Pressed into cider and allowed to ferment, the result keeps indefinitely and historically provided caloric value and food safety through periods when water wasn't safe to drink. Before commercial refrigeration reshaped food supply chains, apple orchards were non-negotiable infrastructure on homesteads and farms across North America and Europe. When grain yields collapsed, apples delivered carbohydrates and vitamin C, a combination that kept scurvy and starvation at bay through harsh winters. No other fruit tree in this list handles genuine cold as well as a properly selected apple variety. Where peaches fail, where figs freeze, where citrus simply cannot survive, heritage apple cultivars keep producing. That's a meaningful advantage for anyone in a Zone 4, 5, or 6 growing region. Most varieties require a second apple tree nearby for cross-pollination. They take 6 to 10 years to hit peak output and produce reliably for 50 to 80 years. 4 mature trees at 200 pounds each is 800 pounds of fruit annually, enough to eat fresh through fall, stock a full year of dried stores, press cider, and trade or share the surplus. Plant once, harvest for generations. Tree number 1. Oak, the civilization-scale food engine. Every other tree on this list is impressive. This one is in a different category entirely. The oak tree fed civilizations. Not as a supplementary food source, not as emergency rations,
as the foundational caloric base for entire cultures across North America, Europe, and Asia for thousands of years. Indigenous communities in California managed oak groves the way modern agriculture manages grain fields, with deliberate clearing, protection, and harvesting systems built around the annual acorn drop. A single mature oak produces 500 to 1,000 plus pounds of acorns every year, not occasionally, consistently for 200 to 300 years, at roughly 2,000 calories per pound with a meaningful fat, carbohydrate, and protein profile. The math becomes staggering. One tree, 1,000 pounds, 2 million calories annually for 3 centuries. The processing requirement is real and worth addressing directly. Most acorn species contain tannins that make them bitter and difficult to digest in raw form. The traditional solution is leaching, soaking cracked acorns in water repeatedly until the tannins wash out. It's not complicated, but it does require intention. The shortcut: select white oak varieties, Korean oaks, or sawtooth oaks, which naturally produce lower tannin acorns requiring minimal or no processing. These can be eaten, ground into flour, or prepared as porridge with significantly less effort. During the Korean War, acorns served as a meaningful food source when conventional supply lines broke down. During European and Asian famines across multiple centuries, oak forests were the last line between communities and starvation. The pattern is consistent across time and geography. When everything else fails, the oak keeps producing. The timeline is the longest on this list. Plant an oak today, and it begins producing in about 20 years. By 50 years, it's a massive, autonomous food system requiring nothing from you. By 200 years, your great-great-grandchildren are still harvesting from the tree you put in the ground. That is the longest food security timeline achievable through a single planting decision. Nothing else on this list, nothing in annual agriculture, comes close. Choose a white oak, Oregon white oak, or sawtooth oak if possible. Full sun, good drainage, deer protection during the first few years. Then give it time. The tree will do the rest for longer than you can imagine.
Why you plant today, not next year. Here's the logic that should settle this decision. An apple tree planted this spring starts feeding you around 2031. That same tree planted in 2031 doesn't start feeding you until 2037. The gap is permanent. Those 6 years of production don't come back. Annual gardens are the right tool for immediate food. Trees are the right tool for food that spans decades. You don't choose between them, you build both layers. Annual crops carry you through the years while the trees are maturing. The trees carry you and the people who come after you once they do. The families throughout history that navigated famine, war, and economic collapse with the most resilience shared a common pattern. They had diverse food sources across multiple timelines. Grains stored from last year, crops actively growing this year, trees planted 30 years ago by someone who thought ahead. You can be that person for the generation that follows you. Or you can keep replanting the same annual garden every spring and hope it's always enough. The most effective moment to start was 2 decades ago. The second most effective moment is right now. If this shifted how you see long-term food production, drop a like. It genuinely helps this content reach more people who need it. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And tell me in the comments, which tree goes in the ground first for you? Fast production with figs and mulberries, or the century-long legacy play with oaks and chestnuts? I want to know where you're starting. Thanks for watching. Now, go find a spot in your yard and start digging.